Your deli sandwich doesn't get any better than that.
Big thanks to Masterbuilt for sponsoring this video.
This is pastrami as we all know it, at least if you make it at home yourself. That is something they made 2,500 years ago, which blows my mind. Did we improve from 2,500 years ago, or are we making exactly the same thing? To give you a good reference, I'm gonna start by making my own pastrami. This is a brisket, and it's the main ingredient for pastrami. Not the whole thing, but the flat. This is the flat part of the brisket. And the first step is to get the flat out of the brisket. All you need to do is just follow that line of fat and take it off. This is called the point of the brisket, and this is real magic. If you put this in a stew, this is the best stew you're gonna ever have. It's like, whew. Next step is to clean this brisket up. I want the top fat off. I'm going to cut off the gray edges, and I'm gonna make this thing look absolutely freaking beautiful. And now you can see why it's actually called a flat, because it's pretty flat. The next step in the process of creating pastrami is putting this thing into a brine. This is a very complex part about making pastrami, but I'm going to make it as easy for you as I can. So I'm gonna take this, put it in a bag, and yes, it's important, because nowadays a lot of barbecue companies, they sell buckets, brining buckets. And in my personal opinion, brining buckets are the most wasteful thing to buy ever. Because instead of making whole gallons of brining and filling up a whole bucket, I just need to put a little bit of brine in this bag. And if all of the meat is covered with the brining fluid, I'm golden. Brining with nitrate salt is an important part of making pastrami. It's where the red comes from. A lot of people think that red's smoke color. It's not, it's nitrate. Now the amount of nitrate that you use depends on where you live. Now for instance, in America they have different nitrate levels than compared to Europe. I'm going to tell you which is the right amount for flavor in pastrami. I'm not going to give you the maximum limit. We're going to stay well under that for our personal body to take care of it in a proper way. And since we're using this bag, we don't have to make a whole lot of it. That's a liter of water, and that's the same as about a quart. To that I'm adding 3 tablespoons of table salt and 3 tablespoons of 0.6% nitrate salt. And those 3 tablespoons are about 75 grams of salt. Now, if you have 6% nitrate salt, I want you to reduce this amount by 10% and then add the rest of it with ordinary salt. So you're going to have the same nitrate levels and you're well under the limits. Let's continue with 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of coriander seeds, 2 teaspoons of mustard seed, 2 teaspoons of ground pepper, a teaspoon of chili flakes, a teaspoon of allspice, half a cinnamon stick, and I'm gonna finish it off with 2 bay leaves. Give it a good stir and your brine is done. And this is where it becomes easy. You just take that brine and pour it in the bag. Now let's say you have a smaller piece of meat or a smaller bag or whatever ratio you have. It doesn't really matter, because what happens now is that if I lock this bag, leave a little bit open, push out all of the air, then this pastrami is going to be fully submerged in fluids. All of the salt and all of the sugar is going to go in that pastrami. This is the golden rule to follow to make pastrami. 6 days sitting in the fridge. It became, well, almost glowing red in color. The nitrate did its job. This is a now food-safe product. The nitrate and the salt work together to kill any bacteria and make this into something beautiful. Pastrami also firmed up and became more compact. And all we need to do with this pastrami now is just to smoke it and cook it until it's done. I'm gonna put this in the Masterbuilt smoker and smoke it at a temperature of 120 degrees Celsius until that core temperature hits a 92 degrees Celsius. I just got the notification on my phone. The core temperature of my pastrami is 92 degrees Celsius, so it's time to take it off, and oh, look at that. What an absolute beauty. Gotta be careful with it. Look at that. That looks so shiny. so juicy, so beautiful. This is what pastrami is all about. That red color from the smoke, that red color from the nitrate, smoked to perfection, and it means it has a lot of flavor. I want to make this as good as I can. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna let it rest. And the way that I'm going to do it is by wrapping it up in aluminum foil and putting it in my oven at 65 degrees Celsius. And a long resting period will make this pastrami absolutely freaking amazing. All this time and all this effort that we put in to make this. Oh, I wanted to say this better be good, but if you could smell this, wow. That is one beautiful looking pastrami. Just look at that. Don't waste any of it. We most definitely have that smoke color. We most definitely have that pink. And this thing is just waiting for me to slice into it. There we go. Oh, careful. The ends are like a little thin, which means they're likely to fall apart. Let's take a look at this. That is one beautiful looking pastrami. I want to get a slice out of that. Juicy pastrami. It doesn't fall apart on you, but almost does. This is freaking amazing. Oh. Ridiculous. And that's how you make homemade pastrami, which can't be beat. You can't buy this in the store. You gotta make it yourself to make it this good and have this experience. Now, of course, this is gonna be on a sandwich, which I'm gonna do later on. But first, I'm gonna show you how to make pastrama. That's what the ancient pastrama was made of. It's a nice dark red piece of meat with some beautiful fat covering. It even still has the bone in it. And you might have guessed it, this is a piece of lamb. More specifically, this is a male lamb. That's what the herders used to use. They kept the females to reproduce and they slaughtered the young males. Because the shepherds used to be out in the fields and they needed some food to keep them warm, to keep them energized throughout their work. And that's exactly what they use this for. First thing that I'm going to do is trim some of this hard fat off. The next step is that I'm going to take the bones out of this meat. I'm just going to use this small knife to work my way along the bones and cut the bones free. You can still use this bone for soups or pasta sauces, or you can give it to your dog, which in my case is probably going to happen. And then you end up with a beautiful piece of meat like this. That shepherd would take that piece of meat and put it in a big bucket of salt. He would probably put a whole lot of meat in that salt and keep it for a long period of time after he butchered the lamb. Maybe he would have also added some spices. And my best guess is that he would put some bay leaves in, some juniper berries, and some cloves. And then of course he would have broken those down. And to the spices he would have added salt. And that's just the regular salt. It's not the salt with the nitrate in it, because that's a thing of the current past. The luxury our butchers have, but they didn't used to have. But look at this mixture. That looks very tasty. I'm calling this a shepherd's cure, with all ingredients picked from his journey when he was walking around with his sheep, mixed together with a little bit of salt, and then he took that piece of meat and brined it by just putting that salt and those herbs on it. Very easy thing that he would do, a dry brine to make salty meat. For us, this is all about flavor. For that shepherd, it was all about survival. That salt would make sure all of the bacteria on that meat would instantly die. He would put this in a barrel. I'm going to put this in my fridge and let it sit just as long as I did with my pastrami. And this is what pastrama looks like after 6 hours in the fridge. Brining with a dry brine. And you can clearly see the difference, how the meat didn't turn red, but got this, brining brown onto it. And the fragrance that comes off it is not as intense with the wet pastrami brine. It did, however, firm up more than the pastrami. And now I'm going to smoke it just like with the pastrami, so we can compare what it looks like in the end. I'm gonna put this in the master build, smoke it at a temperature of 122 degrees Celsius until the core temperature is 92 degrees Celsius. I just got the notification and my pastrama is done. Look at it. Oh, be careful now. It's not fall apart tender, but it's very close. It's like the same temperature that I cook my brisket at. It's just gonna be a beautiful piece of meat that I can slice up, and it's fully cooked up to 92 degrees Celsius. And just like with the pastrami, I'm going to put this in aluminum foil and I'm going to put it in my oven and let it sit there until it's fully rested. Thinking about all the time spent to create something like this, just to be able to take it in the field for a longer period of time. Those shepherds had to go out for days, maybe even weeks at a time to get the... Whoa, that looks so good. I didn't expect it to look this good. And it's almost fall apart tender. Oh, it's fall apart tender. Oh, and as you can see, the shepherd dog is also interested. It's the whole thing. Everything's coming together here. And just look at this. It is looking so freaking good. Let's slice into it. It's falling apart. Oh, look at that. Oi, 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 oi. That is one beautiful piece of meat. And you see that red ring right there. That is the nitrate from the smoke. And that's the same nitrate that we used in the pastrami to turn it into, well, a whole red piece of meat. So basically it's the same thing, except the smoke doesn't penetrate as far as the nitrate does. Now, of course, I gotta do a taste test to compare this with the pastrami. And as I'll let you know, it was good. But what does this taste like? Whoa. This is so close to the current day pastrami. Of course it's lamb, it's completely different, but it's not, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't taste that this is lamb, it tastes like pastrami. Something that we still eat today that we ate back then and it's still so similar. Oh, how cool is that? Whoa. And of course I'm gonna turn this into a delicious sandwich with a little bit of mayonnaise, some mustard, sauerkraut, homemade pickled onions, and of course that delicious pastrami. And there you go, your deli sandwich doesn't get any better than that.